The email landed in my inbox with the force of a guillotine. Effective immediately. No personal phones permitted on the work floor. I blinked at my screen, certain I had misread something. But no. There it was. The latest decree from our new manager, Diane Holloway. Typed in bold red font as if the words themselves were emergency vehicles. Sirens blaring. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Within seconds, the office erupted in a chorus of disbelieving groans and furious whispers. Diane had been with Pendragon Solutions for exactly 3 weeks and had already implemented 17 different efficiency measures, each one more soul-crushing than the last. But this crossed a line. "She can't be serious," muttered Fiona from the cubicle next to mine, her face a mask of horror as she clutched her iPhone protectively against her chest. "Oh, she's serious," I replied, scrolling through the rest of the email. "Says here we need to leave phones in our cars or in the new lockers they're installing in the break room. Violation will result in..." I squinted at the screen. "Disciplinary action up to and including termination. My name is Margaret Maggie Sinclair. And until 3 weeks ago, I loved my job as a senior systems analyst at Pendragon Solutions. I had been with the company for 7 years, knew every system inside and out, and had a spotless performance record. I was respected, valued. And then Diane happened. This phone ban was the final straw. I had a 6-year-old daughter, Emma, with a heart condition. Her school needed to be able to reach me instantly if anything happened. Keeping my phone accessible wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. I closed the email and marched straight to Diane's office, knocking firmly on the door frame. She looked up from her immaculate desk, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised in what I'd come to recognize as her default expression of mild disdain. "Margaret, what can I do for you?" Her voice carried the practiced patience of someone who viewed interruptions as personal affronts to their productivity. "It's about the new phone policy," I said, stepping into her office. "I have a daughter with a medical condition. I need to be reachable in case of emergencies." Diane's expression didn't change. "The policy applies to everyone, Margaret, no exceptions." "But my daughter has your emergency contact information on file at her school, correct? They can call our main line. Sharon at reception will make sure you're notified." I stared at her in disbelief. Sharon, our septuagenarian receptionist, who routinely put calls on hold and forgot about them, who sometimes took 2-hour lunch breaks, that was her solution? "With all due respect," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "That's not good enough. We're talking about potentially life-threatening situations where minutes matter." Diane sighed, closing the folder she'd been reviewing. "Margaret, I understand your concern, but we've had too many incidents of productivity drops due to phone distractions. Studies show workplace efficiency increases by nearly 30% when personal devices are removed." She smiled thinly. "I'm sure you want what's best for the company." "What I want is to know my daughter is safe," I countered. "And she will be. The policy stands." She looked back down at her desk, a clear dismissal. "Anything else?" I left her office seething, my mind racing. I could quit. But in our small town, tech jobs were scarce, and I had a mortgage and medical bills to pay. I could go over Diane's head to her boss, Regional Director Thomas Prescott. But he had personally selected Diane for the position and was notoriously loyal to his chosen managers. As I returned to my desk, I noticed something that made my blood boil even hotter. Through Diane's office window, I could clearly see her checking her own personal phone. "Rules for thee, but not for me," I muttered. That's when the idea hit me. If Diane wanted to ban phones, fine. I would comply with the letter of her policy, but not its spirit, and I would make sure the entire office joined me. The first thing I did when I got home was dust off my old Radio Shack catalog collection. As a tech enthusiast with a nostalgic streak, I had kept them as mementos of a bygone era. Flipping through the yellowed pages, I found exactly what I was looking for. Pagers. Pagers weren't phones. They were communication devices that predated cell phones, used to receive short messages. Most importantly, they weren't covered by Diane's hastily written policy. I went online and discovered that, surprisingly, pagers weren't just relics of the 90s, they were still manufactured and used, primarily in healthcare settings where cell signals could interfere with medical equipment. After some research, I found a supplier that could deliver 20 units by the end of the week. While I waited for the shipment, I set up an anonymous email address and sent messages to my closest work allies: Fiona, our marketing analyst; Derek, our IT specialist; and Rachel, our HR coordinator, who secretly despised Diane but had to maintain professional neutrality. By Wednesday afternoon, we had a plan. By Friday morning, we had 20 pagers distributed throughout the office, one for each person in our department who wanted to join the malicious compliance movement. I'll never forget the look on Diane's face the following Monday when the first pager went off during our morning meeting. The distinctive beeping sound echoed through the conference room, causing Diane to stop mid-sentence. "What is that?" she asked, her eyes scanning the room. I pulled my pager from my belt clip and checked it casually. "Oh, just my pager. It's my daughter's school." I stood up. "I should probably check on this. It might be important." Diane's lips pressed into a thin line. "A pager? Really, Margaret?" "Yes," I replied innocently. "You said no phones allowed on the work floor. This isn't a phone." A few of my colleagues suppressed smiles. Diane's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded curtly. "Fine. Make it quick." I left the meeting, taking my time in the hallway before returning. As I sat back down, Fiona's pager went off, then Derek's. By the time the meeting ended 15 minutes later, 6 different pagers had interrupted Diane's presentation. The rest of the week followed the same pattern. Pagers beeped continuously throughout the office, each time requiring the recipient to step away briefly to check the message. We had set up a rotation system where we would page each other at strategic intervals, creating maximum disruption while remaining technically compliant with company policy. Diane was furious but trapped by her own rules. She called me into her office on Thursday afternoon, her normally perfectly coiffed hair slightly disheveled. "This pager situation has got to stop," she said without preamble. "It's more disruptive than the phones ever were." I widened my eyes in feigned innocence. "I'm just following your policy, Diane. No phones on the work floor." "Don't be obtuse. Margaret, you know exactly what you're doing. Following company policy to the letter while ensuring I remain accessible in case my daughter has a medical emergency?" "Yes, I do know what I'm doing." Diane leaned forward. "I could amend the policy to include pagers." "You could." I agreed. "But then I'd have to use something else. Did you know carrier pigeons are making a comeback? Or I could use a two-way radio. Or perhaps smoke signals from the parking lot." She stared at me, her jaw working. "This is insubordination." "No, this is me being a responsible parent while adhering to company policies. If you want to write me up for that, go ahead. I'm sure Thomas would be interested to hear how your new policy is preventing employees from being reachable in case of family emergencies." Mentioning Thomas was a calculated risk, but it paid off. Diane's expression flickered with uncertainty. "I'm trying to improve productivity," she said, her voice slightly less confident. "And how's that working out?" I asked mildly. "Since the pagers started, has productivity improved?" We both knew the answer. Not only had the constant pager interruptions decreased productivity, but employee morale had plummeted under Diane's draconian measures. The pagers were just the visible symptom of a deeper problem. Diane dismissed me without resolving anything, but I could tell she was rattled. The pager brigade continued, and we escalated our tactics. We decorated our pagers with bright stickers and rhinestones. We set custom beep patterns. Derek programmed his to play the first few notes of "Stayin' Alive" when it went off. By the second week, even employees who initially hadn't joined our rebellion had acquired pagers. The office sounded like an electronic aviary. Beeps and chirps coming from every direction at all hours. Work slowed to a crawl. The situation came to a head when Regional Director Thomas Prescott made a surprise visit to our office. He walked into a cacophony of pager alerts. employees constantly stepping away from their desks, and a visibly frazzled Diane trying to maintain the illusion that everything was under control. I was called into an impromptu meeting with both of them that afternoon. "Margaret," Thomas began, his tone serious but not unkind. "Diane tells me you're the ringleader behind this pager situation." "I wouldn't say ringleader, sir," I replied. "I simply found a way to comply with the new phone policy while ensuring I remain reachable in case my daughter has a medical emergency, and the rest of the staff followed your example. People tend to recognize a good solution when they see one." Thomas turned to Diane. "And the phone policy was implemented because—" Diane straightened in her chair. "Studies show workplace efficiency increases by nearly 30% when personal devices are removed. I was trying to boost our department's productivity." "I see." Thomas leaned back. "And has productivity increased since the policy was implemented?" Diane shifted uncomfortably. "Well, there have been some adjustment challenges." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Margaret, in your opinion, what was the phone situation like before the ban?" I considered my answer carefully. "People checked their phones occasionally, sir, but it wasn't excessive. Most of us kept them on silent and used them primarily during breaks or for important personal matters. Like being available for a child with a medical condition," Thomas noted. "Exactly." Thomas drummed his fingers on the table, then turned back to Diane. "I appreciate your initiative, but this policy seems to be causing more problems than it's solving. I'm going to suggest we revisit it." Diane's face flushed. "But the studies don't always translate to real-world applications." Thomas interrupted gently. "Sometimes the cure is worse than the disease." The phone policy was rescinded the next day. Diane sent out the email, this time in regular black font, and the pagers gradually disappeared from the office. Most of us donated them to a local hospital that still used them for their medical staff. I'd like to say that was the end of it, that Diane learned her lesson and became a more reasonable manager. But real life isn't that tidy. While she never implemented another blanket ban, she continued with her efficiency measures, each one seemingly designed to squeeze more work out of fewer resources. What did change, however, was how the staff responded. The pager rebellion had united us. We had discovered our collective power, and we weren't afraid to use it. When Diane tried to cancel our 10-minute afternoon breaks, we responded by taking perfectly synchronized bathroom breaks at exactly 3:15 p.m., leaving the office floor deserted. When she attempted to implement mandatory Saturday shifts without additional pay, we all suddenly had pressing family commitments. 6 months after the pager incident, Diane was promoted to a position at company headquarters, a classic move to save face while removing a problematic manager. Her replacement, a veteran team leader named Maria Gonzalez, who had been with the company for 15 years, took a different approach. She actually asked us what we needed to do our jobs effectively. On her first day, Maria called me into her office. I went in cautiously, still conditioned to expect the worst from management meetings. "Margaret," she said with a warm smile, "I've heard a lot about you." "All good, I hope," I replied, not entirely sure that was true. "Let's just say I heard you're not afraid to stand up for what's right." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I want to talk about your daughter. What accommodations do you need to ensure you can be there for her while still meeting your responsibilities here?" I nearly cried with relief. We worked out a system where I could keep my phone on my desk, set to priority alerts only, and I would have the flexibility to work from home when Emma had doctor appointments. That conversation set the tone for Maria's management style. She treated us like adults capable of balancing our personal and professional lives. Productivity increased naturally because people weren't wasting energy on resistance and resentment. As for me, I found myself promoted to team leader 6 months later, then to department manager a year after that. When I moved into my new office, the same one Diane had once occupied, the first thing I did was place a vintage pager on my desk as a reminder. Not of the victory, but of the lesson. Rules without reason breed rebellion. while respect breeds results. Emma is 12 now, her heart condition managed with medication and regular checkups. My phone sits openly on my desk, alongside pictures of my daughter and my team. It rarely rings during work hours because everyone knows I'm available when they truly need me. No emergency required. Sometimes I think about Diane, wondering if she ever realized what went wrong. I doubt it. Some managers never understand that authority is granted, not taken, and that compliance without commitment is a poor substitute for genuine engagement. The pager rebellion might seem like a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but it changed the culture of our office permanently. We learned that standing up for reasonable treatment isn't just about personal dignity. It's about creating a workplace where everyone can thrive. And whenever a new employee joins our team at Pendragon Solutions, I make sure they know two things. Their contributions are valued and their phones are welcome, as long as they use them responsibly. Because sometimes, the most powerful message you can send is a simple one: I trust you. And unlike a pager, that message never needs batteries.